And then the first item on the agenda are some presentations. So we are broadcasting now. If you would like, I could start with the presentations.
Yes, let's start with that.
So I would like to introduce Tracy Leach and Melissa Olnick from the Illinois Section AWWA. Tracy.
Thank you. Hello, good evening. My name is Tracy Leach. I'm with the Illinois section of AWWA. We are dedicated to providing safe and sustainable water to the state of Illinois with a total water stewardship, engaging our communities to share in the value of water. Our members internationally are approximately 50,000 members. And in Illinois, we are the fourth largest section of AWWA with approximately 2,400. Now, Melissa Olenek will present our water ambassador.
Hi, thank you for having us today. Illinois Section AWWA has created the Water Ambassador Program. It's an initiative created to elevate public perception, knowledge, and consumer education of the water industry, which is so important in our current society. The program aims to accomplish these goals by presenting a new communication platform of educational and promotional content in a manner that is relevant, engaging, and consistent among all participants in the program. In this program, we have 3 different levels of standard that you can achieve. We have the bronze, the silver, and the gold, and your achievement is based on frequency and your method of communication to your members. So we are honored to present the City of Evanston, the gold level, the highest standard of the Water Ambassador Program.
Cool.
Hold on one second. Just get it from this angle. Do you want me to take one first?
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Congratulations to the team, Dave.
Thank you. And we actually have another presentation, and I'd like to introduce City Manager Gandersky.
Good evening, members of the APW Committee and Chair Reed. Good afternoon. The American Public Works Association's Excellence in Snow and Ice Award is presented annually to promote excellence in the management and administration of public works, snow and ice operations, use of best practices, and minimization of environmental impacts. Evanston is one of only 5 cities to receive the award in 2022. Other honorees include Dickinson, North Dakota, Lawrence, Kansas, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Schaumburg, Illinois. This recognition is a testament to the exceptional efforts and close coordination of the public works staff and our entire City of Evanston team in response to winter weather events, as well as cooperation of residents and visitors. The Public Works Agency takes tremendous pride in keeping Evanston roadways safe for all users, both during and after winter storms, and we continue to refine our plans year after year to ensure we're following best practices and are prepared for whatever the season has in store. I would like to thank the Public Works Department, including, but not limited to, Acting Public Works Director Edgar Cano for their excellence in this award.
Second to bring up my supporting staff. They had a lot to do with this award. We're very proud and honored that he graduated with 2 chooses for this, so if I could please have.
Can Edgar speak using the microphone? My apologies.
If I could please have Donald Cornelius, Kevin Johnson, Leslie Perez, Stephen Walker, Sean Pesca, and William Reed join me up here.
Slide over a little bit, William. There you go.
Thank you for allowing us to do that, Chair Reed. We can move on to the agenda at this time. We have public comment, I believe.
First, may we have a motion for the minutes of the previous meeting?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the minutes of the A&PW Committee meeting of April 25th, 2022.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Nusba, seconded by Councilmember Burns. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed and abstentions, the motion passes. That brings us to public comment.
And we have one person in person tonight, and Clark McCarthy.
Go ahead,
Thank you
Mr.
guys for having
McCarthy.
me. Good?
Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, quick introduction. My name's Clark McCarthy. I live in the 6th Ward on Lincolnwood Street with my beautiful family. I have 2 wonderful children, and I'm a union pipe fitter. So the reason I'm talking here tonight is about this overnight parking ban on commercial vehicles. As a union pipe fitter, I travel all over the place. I've been in the steel mills in Gary. I've been at the Waukegan County Courthouse. I've been as far west as Aurora. Every day is a new place for me. A big project I'm kind of proud of was the installation of medical gases at McCormick Place when we needed that as a hospital. So it was kind of fun to be an essential worker, and I got a lot of cheers from that. And right now, with this ordinance being written the way it is, I'm concerned not only for myself personally, but the way it's written now, it seems to say, welcome to Evanston. We'd love to have you, unless you do one of these jobs. And that job requires a company vehicle or a van or anything like that. I'm a little interested into why B plates have been removed, but and the reason being is I drive a pickup truck for work. Not something I personally would have ever bought, but for work, it's needed. As I said, I go all over the place, and sometimes I need to throw stuff in there. What's interesting to me about the removal of the B plate on the last, and I don't have the minutes for the last meeting, I apologize. But what's interesting is all pickup trucks are B plates. So where does that put my neighbors who don't have company logos, but they do have pickup trucks? And even further, I have a neighbor with an F-350. Now that's a D plate. And again, I find that to be particularly obnoxious myself, but guy wants a pickup truck, you can buy a pickup truck. What would I care? So we need to be careful, I think, in the way that this ordinance is written as to who we want in our community, but also how are we going to determine what vehicles are welcome? Because for me right now, the determining factor is I have a company logo on it. And I think that's why I was given a $50 ticket to begin with. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that seems like it's clearly a violation of the First Amendment. Because I can have a neighbor with a Subaru with 1,000 bumper stickers on it, but if I got a company logo on it, different story. So I think I'm in agreement with all you guys. We got to have some sort of rule. I don't want to have semi-trucks parked up and down my block. And Councilman Burns, I know you live in a different ward there, and might play a little differently in your ward. But realistically, the reason I'm here tonight is I'd really like to be able to come home from work and park in front of my own house. And I'm happy to pay some sort of permit for that. I'd be happy to. I just I want to park legitimately. You know, I don't want to wake up every morning and go, oh, there's a $50 ticket for what? So I was wondering if we might be able to propose some sort of case-by-case ordinance, and that, you know, maybe we need to look at zoning in your case, because I know you have a lot of, you know, different contractors living over there. But yeah, I don't think we can just ask people, and again, Councilman Newsman, I'm sorry, I said your name wrong. As you proposed, and I think it was February, we can't just say we can have 5 per block. Because if we have 5 plumbers living on a block, well, what about the 6 that wants to move in? So maybe we need to look at that on a case-by-case basis of, okay, this guy wants to move in, he's got a company vehicle, is there enough parking, how many other people have permits, et cetera. And if you guys want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you guys have any other info on that. But other than that, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have anyone else signed up for public comment?
Yes, we have 3 more. Francine Allen is next.
Ms. Allen?
Mike Vasilko. is
Mike,
that-
Mr. Vasilka?
Thank you. So last time the council met, Councilmember Kelly requested the staff come back to you with kind of a roadmap of how are they going to reform the practice of preparing a bills list and a credit card list that kind of requires the council to give uninformed consent on items that will probably come back, you know, the next year as a budget increase for the previous year. So this sounded like a particularly important request. And just to give you some examples, I looked at the bills list based on that thought. And, you know, if you look at the credit card bills, they total on average $200,000 a month. So that's $2.4 million a year that is basically non-budgeted spending. So maybe there should be some limit on credit cards that the council decides is the appropriate limit. So I'm sure that's part of what's coming back to us from last year. Example 2 would be, there's a lot of scheduled maintenance and supplies and what's referred to as stock items for throughout the bills list that roughly is like $60,000 a month. So that's $720,000 a year. It seems to me those things should be budgeted as part of operations, not just pushed in the way it's currently done. And the third example, and I don't know what the number is, but there must be 40 or 50 line items for MC squared. And we learned last week that, or last time we met, that we're paying extra for MC squared so that we get this credit for climate change credits. It goes to somebody else, we don't know. And I guess the question is, if we're paying $185,000 a month for MC squared, how much extra are we paying that we're not benefiting from ComEd? Right now, that $185,000 a month is $2.2 million. That it's probably unexpected payments that, again, should be part of an operations cost budget that we're currently not being able to save on. So I would ask that you also look at that. Also, I just had a question. There's $232,000 for parking pay stations. I don't remember that being requested by the council, and that's for roughly 28 stations. That's roughly $9,000 a station. What is our return on investment for these parking pay stations? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vasilko. Next up, can we have Doreen Price?
Hello. I wanted to speak about the adjudication list
potential candidates or people being considered. I think what we're missing is a step. And I think many on this particular group would, in terms of overseeing how this is being done, would agree with what's expressed for the last couple of weeks in interviewing for a new city manager, and then also what the community has said, and it's basically increasing public input. Well, in this case, this is community input by people who are going to be affected by how matters are decided. And decided, we know, when we're talking about equity, and we're talking about people's experiences, and we're talking about what people are going through, this community is unique in many ways, and it's the difference is part of its goodness, and that can be quickly destroyed if we have the wrong adjudication people in place, in which case the vulnerable don't have a chance unless they hire a lawyer. And that's kind of pretty much the way it sort of is, it's or it seems, because we know that we need to have inspectors who understand circumstances, and when they don't, and someone goes to adjudication and the judge doesn't understand circumstances, then basically you're taking money from low-income people who can't afford it, and then it may be something that is something they need help with as opposed to being fined about, and there'll be no discussion on that one for sure. And if they ask for consideration of being of $400 being too much for someone with low income, and being told, well, that's it, then that's pretty insensitive to me in terms of someone who's trying. So I would think that this really deserves public input. In other words, review from not Pioneer Press, but the City of Evanston input. There might have been occasion where someone had experience with one of these judges, either in Skokie or these other areas. That needs to be found, and the only way you find that out if you put out a notice, and for sure internally for everyone involved, that they can review these people and review what they see as essential qualities, which the qualities aren't there that I can pick up, except
Price, I'm going to
equity.
ask you to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Except for equity and stuff. So I would say that we really need a more coherent view of what these judges are going to be like in terms of how they look at the law, which is both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, are you on the line? And that's such an old-fashioned way of saying that, on the line. Ms. Allen? Okay, if you're not there, then is there anyone else that is seeking to give public comment in the audience? Is there anyone like to give public comment? Seeing no further.
Chair Reed?
Yes.
Mary Rosinski wants to make comment as well.
Okay, yeah, Mary, welcome.
No, I'm sorry. I wanted to speak at City Council, so I apologize for the mistake.
Okay, then we will see you then.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we are moving on. We've approved the minutes already, so that brings us to the consent agenda. May I have a motion for the consent agenda? Or first, is there anything that folks would like to remove from the consent agenda? Councilmember Kelly.
Items A1, A3, and A4.
I'll pull A15 as well.
A15 is not on the.
Oh, sorry, I will not then. Thank you. Dave?
Okay. Is that all for the consent agenda? Councilmember Burns. We are taking off item A2, A3, and A4.
A1.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. A1, A3, A4.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
No, not 2.
1, 3, and 4.
Yeah, 1, 3, 4.
Got it. In that case, I will move the consent agenda, which consists of item A2, approval of the BMO Harris Amazon credit card activity. Item.
We can just.
And items A5 through A12.
Yes. Okay, the consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, so that brings us to item A1, approval of the City of Evanston payroll bills list and credit card activity. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will move item A1, approval of the City of Evanston payroll bills list and credit card activity from April 11th through the 24th in the amount of $2,741,927, and bills list for May 10th in the amount of $3,068,514.95. Credit card activity for the period ending March 26th in the amount of $193,188.36.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Burns. Any discussion on this item? Councilmember Kelly.
Just to follow up with public comment, is there, regarding the MC squared, could that be part of the operations budget? Could we, should that be going forward, part of the operations budget?
Interim Manager Stonebeck.
Yes, we do budget for electricity purchase, so this is within budget. And then I believe what Mr. Vasilka was referring to was the additional costs that we pay for RECs to meet the CARB goal. Even with the RECs, MC squared's price for electricity plus the RECs is still below the price that ComEd offers. And just for rough numbers, I'm going to say ComEd sells at 7 cents a kilowatt hour. MC squared we're purchasing it from MC squared around 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And so we're saving that 2 cents per kilowatt hour. That funding is being put into the budget and allocated towards other CARP improvements.
Thank you. So that is part of this is coming out from the operations budget?
It is
Great.
coming out of
Okay.
the operations budget.
Okay,
yes.
thank you so much.
Any further questions on the bills list? Seeing Councilmember Kelly. Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have it. That brings us to item A3, approval to hire 2 administrative hearing officers in response to the request for qualifications for administrative hearing officers. That is RFQ 22, I guess, through 24, unless that's the year. The year 22, number 24, yes. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Are there any questions regarding this item? It's pulled off. Councilmember Kelly.
So where are we at currently in terms of our hearing officers? Do we?
Good evening, Chair Reed, members of the APW Committee, Kelly Gandersky, Interim City Manager. To answer your question, Councilmember, currently we have 2 hearing officers that are paid approximately $60 an hour. They are not under contract. They are, well, they're under contract in the legal sense, but there's not a written contract associated with their tenure here, and there hasn't been for quite some time. So this is something that ordinarily municipalities or counties would RFQ out every 4 years or so. And so we did that to see, just for fairness and to see what the going rates are and what we could get back in bids.
And how does this compare to what we're currently paying?
So this is an increase of up to $144 an hour, which is still under rate, generally speaking. Some municipalities pay $200 an hour or more. We upped the rate to see if we could entice other candidates to assist us in this process.
And so these are different candidates. These are different than the folks.
One
we're
is a hearing officer we currently have, and the other is would be a new hearing officer.
So we would up that hourly rate for that particular?
Yeah, for both, yes.
For both. And the new one. Okay, and is there, there's not currently like urgency, right? In terms of, since we're looking at just, getting new
Well,
city
there
manager.
is, my understanding is out of the 2 hearing officers, one has not been able to come, and if something should happen to the other, or that he's unavailable or sick, we wouldn't have anyone to hear hearings.
Could we potentially, I would see if we couldn't hire someone else for the moment temporarily, as we are hourly, even pay them more hourly if we need to, until we actually, is that a possibility?
So we have to, under our assuming this wouldn't work out if the candidates didn't want to sign the contract or the council wouldn't approve this, technically I would have to go back out again, which would take some time. This is the second time we've went out. I could probably contract someone in an emergency, but I will say these are really difficult positions to fill because not every attorney has experience with municipal administrative adjudication. It's, I don't want to say a specialty, but it is a more nuanced approach. And I know several other municipalities have trouble recruiting for these positions. They don't pay very well. So if you're in a law firm practicing, it's a lot of times not worth your trouble to come and do these for a few hours for a couple $100.
Thank you. Councilmember Braithwaite.
I think you did a great job explaining. I was just sharing what I wanted to share with Councilmember Kelly and other members of the council. So this division does generate fees. I mean, we don't do it to make money, but these officers, the administrative hearing, parking tickets, other fees and fines, and then more recently, we've added alternatives to arrest. So youth that would normally go to county, we talked a little bit about that at our last human services meetings for those of us that are on the committee. It's a great opportunity for youth that would normally get a for petty theft, curfew. I won't go through the details, but all of those cases now flow through our administrative adjudication, which means that they're not going through the pipeline of prison. So I do see a huge value in this, and I want to thank you so much to our city manager, because the first time it was very difficult, and you're trying your best. So I do think that we need to move forward with this with a sense of urgency. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item? All right, seeing none, would someone like a roll? We'll do a roll call on this one.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. That is item A3. Item A4, the interim city manager requests that council approve an additional staffing position for the 2022 budget. So this is a budget amendment. Councilmember Kelly.
Am I moving it?
No, well, yes, first can I have a motion for it?
I motion.
Or you don't have to motion for it, but Councilmember Nusima or Burns or Braithwaite.
I'll move item A4, interim city manager requesting the city council approve an additional staff position for the 2022 budget.
Great, moved by Councilmember Nusima,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Are there any questions on this item?
Would you like to speak to it first?
Well,
Sure.
I don't know if we need
My
it.
first time, I don't know.
Yeah, do you have any questions, or if
Yeah,
not, we can
again,
just
this
vote.
would be even, I guess, a little bit, I would feel a little more strongly about this position versus the hearing officers, given that it is a newly created, full, FTEs are one of the most expensive parts of a budget, so I do feel strongly that this would be good to wait until we have a new city manager in place for this particular position. That's all. And I would like to hear more about the position.
So you have no questions? Are you making a motion, or?
I made a statement.
Okay.
Let me think about
Great,
it for a moment.
okay. Then, seeing no further questions or concerns, all those in
Oh,
favor?
I'm sorry. Well, then, I didn't know. Yes, then I would like to hold this. I'd like to move to have this held until we,
I would have to roll that out of order. You can motion to table.
I'm sorry.
A holding is not available in.
Okay, motion to table.
Is there a second? I will just note, I would normally second a table. One, I don't think that there's support. Maybe if there's a hold, there would obviously be support. But I'll just say, given that this is the one place where this may be held is that it didn't move through referrals. And so that is, it did not, it did move through referrals. All right. So then it even moved through referrals. So it cannot be held, and there's no tabling. I say that this is a very important position, given that this was a recommendation out of the Salvatore Prescott Porter and Porter Lakefront report to add this position to the Parks and Rec Department. I think this committee or a new city manager would agree on that, but Councilmember Kelly.
Great.
Every position at our city is very important, I'd like to say. I'm just, again, it's about the, that we're talking about increasing FTE here, and only because of that, and because it is a particularly important position, I feel it's important that our, new city manager has these, the ability to hire for such positions.
Just to answer that, the new city manager theoretically could still have that ability. This is just a budget amendment approving the funding for the position, correct? And so maybe that helps.
And the assessment of creating new FTEs.
So the assessment of the need for this position.
Correct.
Yeah. Is there anything, Councilmember Braithwaite, are you fine? Or?
No, I'm fine, but sometimes people look at these meetings and see us spending money, and I think it's important for those who haven't read the packet to understand that this was a recommendation that came from the law firm that did this long investigation of our lakefront. And what they said, because I know you read it, is that we're grossly understaffed. So that's the reason for it. I get very frustrated when I hear we're going to wait for a new city manager, as if our operations and our needs are in some type of standstill, which they're not. The lakefront is now open. So yes, I'm in full support of doing it, and I just think that that fact was important to state. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Nusma.
And so just as a point of clarification, we're adding a full-time equivalent to our head count, but we may indeed very well still come in under budget on this line item, depending on what happens with other vacancies.
And I bet she's going to tell us that the lakefront, our Parks and Recs adds an additional 800 of seasonal employees, I think I read that somewhere.
So we may actually not have to amend the budget for this business unit line item because of the lag that we've had in other positions. But as you'll note in the memo, we did put what the balance is, and so there is quite a bit of money left in that fund at this time. So it may be a possibility that we don't have to fund that through a budget amendment for 2022. And I'll just say that in reviewing the report and discussing this with our Human Resources Department, I don't think it's something that the city can afford not to do.
Right.
I think the lives and health and safety of our children are at stake here, and we have to make sure that there's proper oversight.
I agree. I'm going to support this. I think we need to move forward with this. You have given us fair warning that we may end up going over budget on this particular line item, but we just don't know yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
Can you tell us, is it like cities of our comparable size, do we see this? Is this comparable to other cities like this?
So I can give you two examples. One, anecdotally, for the city of Chicago, each department has their own
That's huge.
But they have their own HR liaison per department. And in meeting with Baker Tilly today, who's doing our class and comp study, they said you should have one HR specialist per 1.25 employees. That would mean we should have 9 HR specialists. We currently only have 3.
Wow.
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Right, I guess I was thinking of other cities like Chicago. I expected them to have many more HR personnel, but. So, can you give me that number again? You said it was one.
I believe they said it was 1.25 HR specialists per 100 employees. That's better math.
That makes more a little bit more sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, would anybody like to request a roll call vote on this, or we'll do all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have it unanimously. All right, that is item A4. So that brings us on to item A13, which is which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a perpetual easement agreement with Commonwealth Edison to allow for installation of an alley east of Darrell Avenue between Emerson and Lyons. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Braithwaite. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Braithwaite.
No, I didn't go through all the details of this, but I do believe that this is in the 5th Ward, Councilmember Burns, Mr. Stonebeck, and this will then complete all of the alleys that have, we still have one more. In your ward?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So there's an ongoing project that have impacted many of the residents that live in, that touch the waste transfer station, and it was a huge opportunity when we signed this agreement, and now we're finally getting all the pieces together to make sure that their alleys are improved. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Braithwaite. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. That brings us to item A14, Resolution 35R22, authorizing funding for lead service line replacement work Force Development Program. I read that slightly weird, but.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion on item A14.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, just to pick up where we left off on this, this looks the same as when we discussed it at the last, I think it was the last AMPW meeting. But Councilmember Braithwaite, you may recall that you mentioned we may want to increase the salaries, and Dave, I don't know if your concern is that I don't know if we have any other water apprenticeship programs that are also about this much, around 30,000, and is the concern if we were to, raise this one that it wouldn't be in balance with the apprenticeship program we already have, and if that's the case, at least because these are temporary, apprenticeship opportunities, we might be able to adjust all of them using ARPA funds if that was an eligible ARPA expense. But I'd love to hear from you about if you have any concerns about adjusting the salary.
Thank you. And so I just wanted to respond by saying that I did follow up with Director Stoneback in between the meetings, and we had a very long, conversation. He explained to me a little bit more, and in fact, I had an opportunity to speak to some of the workers that are in the water, the water department, who have come through the apprentice program. So I'm not pretending to speak for all, but my better understanding is, so when someone's hired as an apprentice, they're not really coming with any job skills. So as it pertains, or else they would be applying for a full-time position. So if I was to have a CDL coming in through line, one could say, well, I'm qualified to drive a truck. But then the reality is you're not qualified to drive a city truck. So when I get to the working understanding of the salary, just what they start with, there is a built-in range that will help them to increase their pay as they gain experience. So with that understanding, I'm fine to support this in its
And I guess
format.
if I had a concern at all, which I didn't, but I just want to make sure that it is enough to attract the people that we want to take advantage of the program. And it doesn't seem like we've had any trouble attracting, candidates. And it also includes health insurance, I believe, which is also a big plus. So, but I just wanted to recenter. That's what's most important to me. If we weren't attracting the people that we want to, I would have concerns, and I would say let's make the adjustment. But I don't think that's been an issue. So, but thank you for that update.
No, I appreciate. So you said something important. Yes, they're getting insurance, which is huge. But then, as I spoke to Director Stone, or you know what your title is, you also are making payments into their. Thank you very much.
The
IMRF Retirement Fund.
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I just want to add that I also am extremely supportive of this. Thank you to Councilmember Burns, Direct Interim Manager Stoneback, and others for leading on this really important issue. Seeing that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Wonderful. That brings us on to item A15, Ordinance 30-022, amending City Code Sections 10-4, stopping, standing, or parking. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move item A15.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by
Second.
by Councilmember Burns. Are there any questions on this item? Councilmember Nusma.
I do have some questions. Lucas, I guess it's going to be you. Can you run us through this and tell us what's different from last time, if anything?
Chair, member of the council, Luke Tatara, acting division manager. So there's not too many changes from the last thing because there was not too much direction given to us what to do. Still, there was a lot of opposition for the B plate. So right now, the ordinance written is the FP plates and the regular passenger car plates can apply for the permit under given ordinance right now. Ordinance. But still, I know there was a lot of confusion about the B plates, so I did some research. I even called the dealerships today, and according to Illinois State, any car which have an open cargo in the back has to have a B plate. Any van who doesn't have a bench seat in the back or doesn't have a windows also have a B plate. So I don't say probably some of the residents, buyers can have some outlet to have a different kind of plates, but when you go to dealership and when you buy the Ford pickup truck or Jeep Gladiator or let's say van, you are required to have a B plate. But after that, you can reconsider, do some specialty plates and stuff like this. So that's why when we bring the ordinance in front of you, the committee, we put the B plates because this will be the easiest way to enforce. Without going by the plate size, we have to have somebody in the collector's office when they obtain the permit to make. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you there. Finish that thought, and then I.
We have to have somebody to make the determination if this car or this truck or this van comply with the policy or not. There's many types of car. That's why the safest way is to go by the plate type, which I know some of the members are not comfortable going with.
If I may interject, specifically when looking at the next policy about the wheel tax, we do see that the wheel tax does create a delineation between different weights of cars. And so if we know when someone pays the wheel tax what the weight of their car is, could we just enforce this based on a weight classification? That way we include, I'd in fact flip this and say that if you have a passenger vehicle a regular P plate or even FP plate, which usually is a passenger vehicle, is that correct?
FP plate
is typically a passenger vehicle. And so if you have one of those plates, I think the only thing you need to do is register, pay the wheel tax if you're going to be parking on the streets. If you're going to stay here, just pay the wheel tax is what I would say, without having to pay an extra $30 fee, because what is the impact on the city and on our infrastructure if your car is the same as anyone else's car and the only difference is that it has a different license plate, or maybe it's as Councilmember Revelle, it was here, she's not here now. As Councilmember Revelle's constituent had, I think it was, again, a regular vehicle, just an FP plate. Your vehicle isn't causing a burden to the city more so than any other vehicle. And so we shouldn't try to, and forgive me, but, nickel and dime residents when their vehicle causes no further harm to the infrastructure. And so my thought is that for those vehicles that we are concerned about, that Councilmember Kelly raised, which are the larger vehicles, which are these big semis that in your ward you're worried about, those things can be addressed by the weight, and that is already built into the system with when folks pay the wheel tax, from my understanding. I see Councilmember Braithwaite has a light, and then Councilmember Burns, and I also jumped into Councilmember Newsom's time.
Yeah, so I don't see much change since the last time we've had a discussion, and my concerns are very simple then. I think I'll speak for my ward, my residents. It's a very commercially diverse wards based on the shopping center, the industrial area, as well as very narrow residential streets. The complaints that I get are complaints of pickup trucks, work trucks that are on narrow streets that sometimes sit for days and don't move all the time, and then sometimes it's difficult for them to get by. So my sense is that's difficult to enforce as is in the current condition. I can't speak for anyone else's wards that, other cities, but I don't know how this impacts our CART plan also. I gave some thought about that since our last conversation, because you showed me larger vehicles that would now be added to the residential area. So
My intent was to show you that they would not be.
they would not be. Okay.
The largest.
The largest of large. Well, thank you for that clarification. So I'm just, again, I said if, the folks in the wards that are asking for this, for whoever their residents and individuals, I say let it do a pilot, start small, and then you can expand it. But I'm definitely not in support of this just based on the feedback that I've received from my residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns.
I think it's hard for me to support this as is because it doesn't really, I don't think it addresses the concern that, prompted this discussion, unless, I'm wrong on that. But I'm also concerned just as much about pickup trucks because we got some really good data from Joining Forces for Affordable Housing, which is an advocacy group out of Connections for the Homeless, that said the Fifth Ward has the greatest percentage of renters than any other ward. And what that means is you may see a lot of single-family houses, but they've been converted. Many of those are now rental properties, and so there's a lot of competition in a sense for street parking, and we already have a lot of pickup trucks in the neighborhood. And my concern, and I don't think we have the capacity to really enforce enforce the code that we have right now, especially around pickup trucks. And I could see potentially additional pickup trucks being added to the street if we allow them to park. So that's my issue is we already have this. This is already happening, although it's not supposed to be happening. It's not currently being enforced. It could create more competition for parking with people trying to get into their homes in these kind of commercial vehicles. So I'm concerned about that. That being said, because I know pickup trucks, I think that is really what started all this. I'd still be open to a pilot program. Now, Councilmember Braithwaite is saying it should be narrowly focused on in certain wards. I think it would be tough for me to support that. I get what he's saying, but I think just to be fair, it would need to be citywide in all the wards for it to be fair for all residents. But I would support some type of pilot, pilot program to see what happens. But I don't know if I'd support it as it's currently written.
Can I make a motion here? Or I'd like to see how folks feel about this a motion that I'm thinking about making, which is one that we would again exempt if it's a passenger plate or an FP plate. The only thing they should have to do is get the wheel tax, and then they're good, right? It's not a big pickup truck; it's a small passenger vehicle, and so we shouldn't add any additional fee to those folks. And then the next layer up is those pickup trucks, which are not, too large, but they are somewhat, we don't want 6 of them on a block. We don't want 5 of them on a block. And maybe we raise the fee to a point where if you really want to do it, you do it. And so I think raising the fee to a point where some people will choose to continue to park wherever they're parking now legally or pay for a parking spot somewhere, and some folks will just choose to pay for the privilege to park in front of their houses. And so is that something folks, so Councilmember Burns?
Yeah, I would support that in a pilot. I forgot we talked about that, right? Because the idea is that if it's cheaper to do it locally, if it's cheaper to park your truck in front of your home than it is to park it in a lot, right, where you have to, then everybody's going to be scrambling for the cheaper, more convenient option. But if it's on par, right, you should have to pay more for convenience in a sense, right? And so, but at least it should be the same amount or similar amount to what somebody would pay to park it at a lot. And if they want to pay that same amount to park it, outside of their home, you can do it. but that may not create this scramble for everybody, for people who did have accommodations away from the neighborhood to now want to park in front of their home because it's cheaper to do it. So I forgot we did talk about that. I definitely would support that as a pilot, still as a year pilot program.
Again,
Sure.
the positions.
Good evening, members of the
Mr. Rivera.
committee. Michael Rivera, interim administrative services director. I think the reason why we created a permit was not to nickel and dime the residents. I understand that residents pay for a wheel tax, and I understand that they have a right to park on the streets. The specific reason why we created a permit is because we needed an identifier, a vehicle, if you will, so that we can pull a list of what vehicles would be eligible and what residents and what individuals would be eligible to purchase the rights to parking the vehicles within the city of Evanston. With an FP plate, there's fleet vehicles that are owned in Morton Grove or Lake County, and those vehicles wouldn't buy an Evanston wheel tax, and an individual who is an Evanston resident wouldn't register that vehicle because it's not their vehicle. They don't own it. They're only allowed to use the vehicle. Some vehicles are also registered out of state in Indiana or Wisconsin, and employees are also bringing them into the area. So in order for us to track it, I understand, to your point, Chair Reed, to your point, I understand there's a database of wheel tax, and we know who purchased a wheel tax with a B license plate. That is correct. However, we wouldn't know who's coming from outside of our region, who's wanting to have permissions granted by our permit to be eligible to purchase a permit for having a vehicle from outside of our region.
Mm-hmm. Well, my question on that is, and I think the permit is accurate. I think it's just applied maybe to the wrong group, and apologies there. I think where it does, again, I don't think the intention of the permit is nickel and diming. I think just the application right now puts an undue burden on folks whose vehicles aren't causing a new burden to the city. I would say that with the important thing is here is that same vehicle that has an out-of-state license and is a pickup truck or has an FP plate that's registered in Morton Grove, that vehicle still, I'm saying, would not be allowed to park on the streets overnight. They just would, the identifier would be, has this person paid a wheel tax or not? And so instead of having the vehicle shouldn't, if it's still deemed a commercial vehicle, it should not park on our streets at night. If the vehicle has paid a wheel tax and it's a FP plate from somewhere else or it's whatever, it's good to go and park on the streets.
You're not talking about B plate. You're talking about just
I'm talking about like a passenger vehicle,
Okay,
FP plate. Now, if it is a pickup truck or something different, I would say that is the car that needs the permit. The larger vehicles are what needs the permit, and that's the one that we want to identify, both a wheel tax being paid and the permit to park on the street.
And just to clarify, these type of vehicles are currently legal to park on the street throughout the day. It's overnight from 9 p.m. through 7 a.m. specifically that we're discussing, having the right to park those vehicles in Evanston.
Thank you. Councilmember Braithwaite.
This conversation, I thought the last time you made a case for Uber, and I didn't have a chance to circle back to understand the details of that. So if it's an Uber car, that's someone's vehicle, it's normally here, I was a little confused in the conversation to think that they wouldn't be able to park their vehicles overnight. So I didn't have a chance to fact check. So I would conclude by saying, if somebody has a passenger vehicle that obviously is registered to their address, it's already here. That to me makes sense. But to clarify, if we move this, even in a pilot stage, we are definitely adding more vehicles to the streets, and it's going to be more competitive for our residents to park. And that's why I'm not in support of it. Thank you.
If I can just quickly respond to that, I don't think we're adding more vehicles to the street. These cars are already here. What we're doing is we're ensuring that those people who are parking here overnight are paying their wheel tax. Councilmember Newsma and then Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. I mean, if I can interject, I don't believe we're going to be adding vehicles. I mean, a lot of times, the individuals that work for the corporate companies that are being allowed to take home these take-home vehicles, they surrender their personal vehicles to commute locally in Evanston if they have a vehicle that they're able to drive to and from their job sites. So oftentimes, it would alleviate the amount of vehicles that are actually in Evanston.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will have to admit that this is not an issue that the residents of the Fourth Ward have brought to me. So it's not based on that fact, I will say this is not a major concern in the Fourth Ward. Therefore, what I'm looking for is a fair and equitable solution that works for everyone else in Evanston. I think based on the discussion tonight, we're not quite there with something that we're ready to approve. So I am going to move to table this, have some more discussion offline in full respect of the Open Meetings Act requirements, but get this to a point where when it comes back to us next time, we'll be ready to move it.
I am fully in support of your tabling this, but I would like, I didn't make the motion, but the motion that I was intending to make to pass first, so it's clear that we're giving some direction as this committee to come back with something that maybe folks are willing to at least consider. So are you fine?
Have you made a motion?
I have not, but I'm asking if I can make that motion first and then table it.
Make a motion to
amend what is before us to.
I think my point is, Mr. Chair, if we hold it, you can provide that feedback offline.
I guess my asking to take a vote on it is so I'm not just providing feedback, so it's the committee providing feedback saying that based on the discussion today, this seems like a direction we're interested in pursuing and would like staff to bring us something back. And if we give that direction, I think we're more likely to approve it and have something. We've been doing this the last few times where we've just kind of had the discussion. This is the maybe fourth or fifth time this has been on the agenda.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken any official action before, and so I'm just seeking to take that. Councilmember Kelly.
I would agree with Councilmember Nusma at this point. I feel like we just need more information as opposed to saying we're giving direction, that we're definitely leaning in one direction. I think it would be great also if we could have, I've done some just research on my own of scale and size of the different licenses. I feel fine with like the Ubers and the, small commercial vehicles being able to park overnight. I guess I'd like to learn more about the range of everything that we're talking about. Maybe we could get some visuals on that. I think that would be helpful. My concern is whether they pay, a huge fee. It's the neighborhood, it's safety issues for children, because once you allow overnight parking, that's, we're going to increase the parking on those streets. So
Definitely.
it's about the neighborhood. It's more about, kids, the neighborhood, the size of the vehicle. So I would ask for that. I would concur with Councilmember Nusma if we could get information, get some visuals, as well as other cities, what cities allow B plates parking overnight and all that, I think would be really helpful.
And to Chair Reed's point, I think if there were, specific language that you wanted to change at this point, I think such a motion would be appropriate. But since you're providing kind of general conceptual feedback, I don't think we need to vote on that.
Are you saying that to me or to Councilmember Kelly?
To you.
Oh, you're saying that to me?
Yeah.
I really think I was providing conceptual, but okay, then the motion to table, is there a second to that motion to table?
Second.
All those in favor of tabling. Is there any discussion on the tabling motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
All those opposed, say no. Any abstentions? The motion passes. Oh, I'm sorry, it has to be tabled to a date certain. Is that the next meeting, my presumption? Because tabling is just until the end of this meeting.
I had a question, if maybe council can clarify. I believe at the last meeting it was tabled to be brought back forward at this meeting. So are we still able to table that again?
Yes, there's no rule on how many times we can table, at least in these committees. So are we
June 13th?
June 13th?
As long as people provide feedback, I don't think we've provided.
I don't think
enough
anyone
feedback
in between.
Yeah, but I have some things that I'll talk.
I've said my piece. We've had our discussions. Unless folks are just saying that, I will gladly have discussions with Mike.
For me, I would like to at least. I was hoping to at least come out of here with a pilot program for at least 6 months for the rest of the year, and with the creation of the permit, we could even implement limitations of 100, 200, 300 vehicles. We, you know, as part of the course of the pilot, to obtain data to see if we are in fact quickly flooding the streets with larger commercial vehicles, or if it's just been the status quo and we're just getting a few one-offs here and there. So my intention, you know, I'm a little disappointed. My intention was to at least come out here with some kind of pilot.
I will say that the motion to table, if the intention was to table it beyond this meeting, was out of order, and so we have to remake that motion to table to a date certain or take up.
Yeah. Mike,
As part of the pilot, I also would
I
like
hear
to
what you're saying.
Sure.
This isn't the appropriate forum to hash out the details of policy, and I think we are still at that level with this particular issue. We're not just making one or two changes. We need to go back to the table and figure this out. So I think it's appropriate to table
So
it.
people express what they, you know,
Right.
they reach out to Mike and.
Right, so
if I may allow.
Mike and Luke can take the lead in just reaching out to the committee members individually, getting the feedback, sharing a draft, so when this does come back to us, we'll be good to go.
If I may, no, okay. All right, so are we looking to table this to June 13th?
I'm saying June 13th, it could be our next meeting, whatever.
Do you think
Mike
the
and
next
Luke,
meeting is suffice?
you're most comfortable with?
The next meeting would not work for me. I will be out of town there.
Okay. Then June 13th.
June 13th.
Okay, June 13th. So the motion is to table this item until June 13th. Okay, all those in, first, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Burns. Motion made by Councilmember Nusma. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes, and this item is tabled until June 13th. Okay, so that brings us on to item A16, which is Ordinance 32022, amending Title II, Chapter 2 of the City Code to reflect changes in the Public Safety Commission rules.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Burns. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing no discussion, I have one question. Who is the staff? Oh, thank you. I don't want to make your time here in vain. Thank you. Can you just very quickly explain what the changes are for the public?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Reed and members of the AP&W Committee. Jody Wright, Deputy Chief of Police. So we're doing two things here. We're moving this from the post-application process to now have the applicant present the power card during the application process. In our past process, an applicant would submit an application and then take the power test along with the rating on the same date. We're moving that from after the application process to require them to submit it during the application process. And we're also kind of outsourcing this and making it the applicant's responsibility to take the power test, as opposed to having City of Evanston Police Department staff administer that test.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, are you saying the power test or pilot test?
Just the power test is the police officer wellness evaluation report. It's a test that's been instituted by the Illinois State Training and Standards Board.
And then can you just explain why we're making these changes, or why these changes are being recommended?
Well, in my opinion,
maybe the first one.
I'm sorry, as far as moving it?
Moving it up, yeah. What problem are we trying to solve?
So if we require it as part of the application process, you make it incumbent of the applicant to actually present that at the application process. So when we would previously do it along with the written test, it was to make it efficient. So we would have a one-day testing process where we would administer the written and also the power test at the same time. Because we aren't administering the power test at the police department, we're moving that to the application process. So basically, when an applicant applies, we know that they already meet a level of readiness to be prepared to work as an officer at that application process, as opposed to waiting until see that power test card at the written.
Thank you. Councilmember Nusma.
Will this make it any more difficult to recruit applicants?
No, in my opinion, I've administered the power test for the police department from 2019. Every test starting before then since 2011. And since 2011, applicants have been asking us why we don't accept the power card as part of the application process. Looking at the current state of policing and how many departments are hiring nowadays, a lot of applicants are thinking ahead and going and doing a power test with Joliet Junior College and with Triton. And the reason why is you may have several police departments who are testing on the same date, or you may be interested in applying for 4 or 5 police departments, and this will prevent the applicant from having to take a power test week after week after week, in some cases, depending on how many departments they are applying for.
Great, thank you.
And this is just the first power test, so there is also a power test that's administered prior to the applicant going into the academy. So we feel like it will broaden the application pool, but we also recognize the fact that the applicants will have to, in fact, stay in shape, to be able to pass the power test to be admitted into the basic training academy.
Have we had folks who so we're doing this at the beginning of the application process, or the proposal is to do this at the beginning of the process, whereas we've traditionally done it at the end. Have we had a significant number of folks go through the process, get to the end, and then, fail the power test?
Yes, that's always a possibility.
Well, not a possibility. Have we had that
Yes.
actualized? Okay.
Yes, that's happened in the past.
In a significant fashion.
I would say no. In my experience, we're just moving this process just a couple months. So the difference between the application closing process, where we would be accepting this, to maybe a written exam and then a power test, is probably just like a month or two. So we're only moving a couple months. But yes, there have been applicants who have not passed the power test prior to going into the police academy.
Okay. I would like to know more at this point. Based on this, I don't see any further discussion, but just I personally would like to know a little bit more, and maybe we allow folks to submit at the beginning and we also allow folks to submit at the end. It seems, I'd like to know more about the impacts of, what we think the impact on equity might be and on the diversity of our police department. Those two don't sound like huge changes, but I think when we're especially changing, does this have anything to do with civil service laws? Is there any impact on civil service laws with this? Does the law department have any clue on that?
We've actually been looking into this through a series of steps, and so we have not found any sort of impact or negative effect that this change would have legally.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
No.
Councilmember Burns. Aye. Councilmember Kelly. Aye. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item A17, Ordinance 42022, amending portions of Title 10, Chapter 8, wheel tax of the City Code. Is there a motion? Moved by Councilmember Braithwaite, seconded by Councilmember Newsma. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I just want to clarify that this would, as I read it, this would not have a phased increase. It would just be $5 starting this year, correct? Or starting for next year, correct?
That would be at the start of the sale of wheel tax for 2022, 2023, which would be set to be offered August 1st, and the current year's wheel tax expires September 30th,
Thank
2022.
I think this is pretty big. This will add roughly, somewhere between $200,000 to $250,000 a year to our climate action resiliency plan, it will, I'm sorry, fund, and to allow us to execute the plan. And this is, I think, will be the first dedicated revenue stream to that fund. So I think this is really a good step in the right direction for our CARP goals. Secondly, I have had folks raise issue with the penalty. So this was with the new penalty structure, and I'm in support of this, and I'm really happy that staff took the opportunity to add this to the proposal. I do wish it would have come to committee first, but nonetheless, I do like the addition. So can you explain some of the thought pattern behind the new fee, or the new fine structure, for example, or good?
Sure. Some of the mindset behind it was that we want people to become compliant, so we want to remove the barriers from people achieving their goal of being compliant because they don't have the finances to do so. So in doing that, if somebody is late and doesn't come in to buy the wheel tax within a certain time, they can still come in and buy it at the regular rate. If somebody is late and receives a citation, we would still give them an additional 7 days to come in and purchase the wheel tax and be compliant. We would waive that citation. If somebody didn't purchase the wheel tax if somebody didn't purchase the wheel tax within the 10 days, they would normally escalate an additional $20, and we would remove those barriers. So basically what we're trying to achieve is compliancy. We want to be able to put everybody in a situation where they can be compliant, and by doing so, there's a fair amount of vehicles in Evanston that don't comply with purchasing a wheel tax. So by doing that, we hope to raise revenues by having people come in and be compliant at that point.
Thank you. And do you think, so your estimation is that with this new scheme, and I use that in the best light, with this new scheme that we will increase, so right now we have about 80% compliance rate with the wheel tax, so you believe that we will see an increase in that compliance rate?
There's a potential to increase compliancy because right now, the wheel tax is $85. The ticket is, I believe, $60 for not purchasing a wheel tax. So somebody who forgoes purchasing a wheel tax for 6 months, let's say, because they have a driveway or a garage and we just haven't caught up to them, we may catch them and they'll receive a $60 ticket, which is still $25 less than the wheel tax. So they might continue to pay that ticket and continue to try to escape buying a wheel tax for the remainder of the year until they come in and decide to buy the incoming year's wheel tax at that point in time. So by us removing those barriers and the fines and fees, we make it more attainable for people, and we just want them to be compliant. It's our first stab at of fine and fees reforms, in the city of Evanston. So this is something that we hope we will lead to.
And I'm sorry, one of the key things here, what you're saying is that this previously, if I was coming in to pay this year's wheel tax and I hadn't paid last year's, I would also have to pay last year's before I could pay this year's?
Correct.
Okay, and so you think that will increase compliance?
Correct.
And I think that's correct.
Because the way the system is set up now, if you skip a year and we don't catch you, you can come in and buy the incoming year's wheel tax, and you wouldn't be compelled to buy the prior years.
Okay, thank you. I will say I slightly have the desire, $5 is great, I slightly have the desire to raise it even $10, but maybe we can start here. And
I do too, especially for the bigger
yeah,
trucks, but let's go with what we have.
Yeah, let's start with what we have, and then we can come back to it. But I definitely, in years coming, for the bigger vehicles, want to raise the fees even more, again, to account for their impact. So we'll save that for another day, so enjoy. Okay, with no further discussion on this item, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have it. The item passes. And seeing nothing further before us, no items for discussion, the meeting is adjourned.